Lord, give me strength. Okay. Welcome back to the channel called Planning is Futile. My name is Corinne and I'm your brain damaged host. Today I want to talk about intelligence. I want to talk about intelligence and I want to talk about insanity and how those two things are closely intertwined, and people love to conveniently forget that when it suits them. Okay, so for me, I wanted to come at this from a point of humility, right? Because for me, like the people around me who were an adult or who were adults when I was a kid, they were the ones figuring out, like, you know, what my intelligence level was and what my sanity level was, I guess. And obviously the same thing goes for most people when they're kids. But I just remember having so many extra things that I had to do once the adults around me figured out like what my capabilities were. And I realized this is gonna not be an easy thing to like talk about without sounding boastful or prideful. But the reason I want to talk about it is because it's like I had to do so much extra stuff. I had to do so much extra stuff in school as a kid because of like just the way I tested and the way that I acted, and like once the teachers and everyone found out like what I was capable of scholastically, I guess they just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me to do more and more and more all the time. Like I remember my first feeling of burnout. Like the feeling of burnout you get when you're just like done doing a job. You've just been going for way too long. The first time I felt that, I was 5 years old. I really was. I remember being like on the couch just like, I'm exhausted. What do you mean there's more I have to do today? It's like, oh. Anyone else? I don't know. And because I have all of these weird memories of all of this extra stuff that I was required to do, I want to talk about it because I feel like it explains a lot about like why I am the way I am and why I view certain things the way I do, especially when it comes to work ethic and like people rising to their capabilities and overcoming things and things like of that nature. Because there was so many things happening all at once, all the time. It's like from the ages of 2 onwards, I was being like chronically sexually molested. And then I also had to like exceed in school. And then because I was weird, because I was molested so much, I had to do all this extra like, oh, go do dance lessons, and oh, go do chorus lessons, and go do all these other things that are gonna force you to socialize because you're super weird from being like molested as a kid. And I laugh because I have a nervous laugh and I just laugh about everything at this point. So it's not, I'm not trying to make light of it. But yeah, I was a super weird kid because of all of that. And it was really obvious to anyone who came across me, like who came into contact with me at that age, from like 2, 3, 4, 5 onwards and upwards. And I remember after being tested for like my cognitive abilities or something when I was 5, I was placed in this class in first grade as they called it a model student. And I've never heard of anyone else having this. And I don't know if it was just a weird 90s experiment or what, but I remember in first grade being placed in this classroom and they were like, you're the model student and you're supposed to be the role model of like what all these other kids are supposed to do, and you're 6 and you're supposed to basically be like this perfect student so that all the other kids can understand what that is. And that was like the pressure thrust upon me at the age of 6, just like, oh, and if you don't do everything like exactly how you're supposed to, you're not being a good model student. So like that was the kind of like psychological stuff I was dealing with, in addition to them being like, and if you don't perform perfectly scholastically, and if you don't blah 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 blah, and why are you so weird and quiet? And does it have anything to do with the fact that we have no idea what your home life is like? Oh, maybe. So that was fun. And I say that was fun because I'm just a sarcastic person from a sarcastic portion of the country, and I'm sorry. And I have a hard time with that, and the nervous laugh and all of it. Just that's just like how I've learned how to deal with all of this and talk. And it's not necessarily the best coping mechanism all of the time, I realize, but that's what we're working with. So from model student, first grade, then we go on and on and on. And I remember that's what it was in like fourth grade. I think so. Third and fourth grade, they were always making me do extra reading. That's why I'm decent at reading now. They had me do all these. They called it great books, and it was they were having us do extra reading outside of the classroom. And then I think sometimes they would pull me out for like extra math. And they were always just like pulling me out of the classroom in like third and fourth grade to do extra work that was like of different age levels above us. And that's not a point of pride for me. Actually, that's why all of the other kids thought I was so weird and such a nerd. And they were like, I was ostracized because of it, actually. It was not cool. It turns out. They're like, what do you mean you have to read extra stuff? Oh, you're so weird. You're already reading all the time already. And just the animosity of them, like, it's like a weird, you're a nerd and you're weird, but it's like a undercurrent of envy because it's like, well, how come I don't do that kind of thing? And oh god, it's so much to deal with at the age of like 8, 9, 10. I don't know. And I remember doing this IQ test thing. It was like the WISC IQ test, something that I think they stopped doing it after the 90s or like early 2000s. I'm not sure. But I remember like getting pulled out of class or having to go back to the school or like stay late or something to do this big, huge, like cognitive IQ something test for kids. It was specifically for kids. And then the results were like really, really high. And that's not a point of pride either. It's just that's the facts. And so after all of this, they're like, why are you so weird? Why are you capable of like picking up all of this like emotional and linguistic stuff, and then you're also scoring pretty high in math? Like, what is your deal? It was the whole like gifted kids era. So it was like, oh, your child's gifted and they're in the A plus club. That was the next thing I did after the A. They did the IQ test, and then they tried to make me a model student again in some fifth grade class. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do this again. And I was finally old enough that they like kind of had to listen to me. And my parents were like, can you not make her do this again? This wasn't super helpful last time, and it's definitely not now. It was like, be a model student. And they called it the inclusion class, which I don't think you're allowed to call that now. But basically, it was just a hodgepodge of all, the kids who had various different learning disabilities and all that kind of stuff. And then literally telling me that I'm supposed to be the one that's like the example of how they do everything. It was just a little much. It was a lot of pressure, and it kind of was inappropriate because like they were essentially, as a child, telling me like, you're way further ahead than these other kids, your peers that you're going to be in class with, but you have to pretend you're not, and then also like be perfect so that they have a quote unquote model to look up to. And it was just like, what is this? Who decided this was a program? I think they stopped doing that after that because it doesn't work. And it just holds the person who's supposed to be the model student back, because I remember being in the fifth grade class and being like, okay, well, in first grade I was kind of holding back just because they had told me to be quiet all the time, so I did that. And then in fifth grade it was like, okay, I'm done with my work and I have like 3 extra hours every day where everybody else is just finishing the work I already did, and I'm bored. And it was so stupid. Like, it sounds so stupid and so like try hard and like such the biggest nerd. But that's what was happening. I was just coming home from school every day being like, Mom, I don't want to do this stupid model student thing again. This is ridiculous. I'm bored. I'm like already done with all the work. We're just doing stuff we did last year. Like, And she finally had heard enough of that, like, I don't know, halfway through the first half of the year, like the first semester or whatever, and switched me to a normal class where I didn't have that kind of pressure and weirdness. So that was better. And then they did the A plus club. So they were like, okay, well, we're going to do this A plus club and we're going to single out like the four top scoring students in your whole class. And only the four of you are going to be in this club. And then you have to go do extra science experiments and extra math and extra everything after school and like on the weekends and stuff. I think we had like field trips. I don't remember. I remember doing a lot of extra stuff after school. And it was just so much. It was so much all the time. And then it's like, so in middle school was when I started doing the play. Like I was Annie 5th grade. We did the Annie Junior musical, and I was Annie in 5th grade. And then in addition to trying to do all this extra science stuff and math stuff and A plus club stuff and honor roll and all the stuff that they start implementing once you're in middle school. And then 6th grade, I was also doing the school musical, and I was the witch in Into the Woods Junior, in addition to the A plus club and all the extra stuff and da 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 da. And it just became so much. Like I remember in 6th grade was the first time I had to go to the doctor for like acid reflux because I was so stressed out that I had acid reflux already from just like doing too much all the time, basically. And just chronic stress of like pretending I wasn't being molested at home and being a perfect student, and then like also trying to do theater and stuff. It was just an unbelievable amount of stress for like an 11-year-old. So then 7th and 8th grade, I didn't do the musical. I don't remember if we even had a musical that year or what happened, but I didn't do the musical. I was doing a performance choir instead. We did the what was it called? The Festival Youth Chorus or something. And I was going to all these practices after school at night in a church, and then we were going and doing all of these performances on, not all of the time, but there were specific weekends where we'd have performances either at other churches or it was like our spring concert. I remember we went to the Boston AIDS Walk a couple times, and we sang there in the Hat Shell. Like it was a whole thing. It's so much work all the time, in addition to the schoolwork I was doing, and then the pressure, just all of the pressure. And I was one of those kids who was like, I was obviously a people pleaser. Hello, my main problem. And I was one of those kids who just was like pushing myself to do all of it all at once, all the time, because I felt like it was what was expected of me and I wanted to meet those expectations, blah, blah, blah. And yeah. I remember doing the musical. We had like, it wasn't a musical. 8th grade we did a talent show. That was the performance that spring. Oh my goodness, it was such a nightmare. Like not a nightmare, but that performance was so funny. I think I sang like Teen Spirit, Smells Like Teen Spirit, with two of my friends both playing guitar at the age of like 13. So it was just really funny stuff like that. Really cute. Very, very cute. And so we were working on that, and we were just, oh my goodness. 8th grade was the first year I started really slipping grade-wise because I started dating boys. Surprise. Not that it really matters. And this whole expose is like, I realized that grades don't really matter all that much, and like intelligence tests aren't necessarily accurate, and like all of that kind of stuff. And you know, the amount of knowledge you can accrue is like exponential all of the time, or like, you know, it's infinite. You can always be accruing more knowledge. But I guess my main point here with bringing all of this up as far as my like academic history is just, I was so tired. Like, I know not everybody did the stuff I did, and I was so tired. I was just so tired. I was isolated as fuck. Sorry. Oops. I was so isolated because of the whole like, you're a nerd, you're a weirdo thing. The only friends I had were also like the other kids who were forced to do all of the extra stuff, and then all of the friends I had from like dance and theater, and those were pretty much my people, and everyone else just thought I was super weird, which is totally fine and has been a running theme, which is also fine. And yeah, I then high school. What did we do in high school? Oh my gosh, I finally made it to high school. Oh, in my last video, I was talking about what a hellhole my high school was for the first 2 years. Um, it didn't matter how smart I was. The high school was unaccredited for 2 years, and I had 2 study periods a day. And I was just like, everybody in our whole high school was just running wild, and it was absolutely insane for 2 years. And then it became slightly less insane when they moved to a different high school and got accredited. Like, they built a new high school and got accredited, and then it wasn't as crazy because everybody had actual like classes to fill up their time blocks. Because it's like, if I had 2 study periods per day instead of like, art or shop or like any any cooking class. Like, there was no extracurriculars. That's what happened when we lost accreditation. So it was like, you can be babysat in the gym, or you can be babysat in the art room, or you can be babysat in one of the multiple study periods going on. And that was essentially what happened. It was crazy. Like, the footage some of my friends and old friends still have from our high school is just absolutely insane. Just like piling people into trash barrels in the gym and just rolling them around, and like just like jumping off of bleachers and onto tables, and just because there was just nobody watching. It was total insanity. Talk about insanity. That was insane. I don't think people realize like what it's like, because you can either just let the chaos run through, like let the hate run through you, let the hate flow through you, the chaos flow through you, or you can try to like maintain some semblance of normalcy even though everything's insane. So that's what I attempted to do. So freshman and sophomore year, yeah, I did the musicals. We all saw that in the last video. And then I was trying to like keep all my grades up. They had me in all honors classes, blah blah blah. Like, I had sophomores in my math class freshman year because they were like, "Well, you're smart enough to handle it," blah blah. And it's like, it sounds like bragging, but really it was just extra work. It's like, yeah. They had me doing all the smart kid stuff, but it's just so much extra work, and we all know that like high school grades don't really matter all that much. So, I mean, touche if you made it through without having to do a bunch of extra crap. I did learn a lot, though. That's where I'm like, well, I can't exactly say I didn't learn anything, because I did so much extra stuff that I learned a ton of extra stuff. And that's where I go back and forth on that one. I was always babysitting too, the like freshman and sophomore year of high school, and in 8th grade I started babysitting because it was one of those like, well, we're poor enough that you might as well start working the second you can kind of things, which is fine. And yeah, so babysitting, oh my gosh, the musicals. Oh, and then everybody started freaking out about college junior year, because of course that's what all the high schoolers start, either freaking out about going to college or not going to college, or trying to figure out what the heck you're going to do afterwards, while everyone else freaks out about going to college kind of stuff that year. And oh my gosh, I remember just looking at a bunch of different schools and just being unbelievably confused. And also like, so it doesn't really matter like if I want to look at other schools other than a state school, because I can't afford that. And I was looking at some of the scholarships, and I was like, I don't have time to do what these scholarships are like asking for, because I was working by the time I was a junior. Like, as soon as I was a junior in high school, I was working like 24 hours a week at Jo-Ann Fabrics, and I loved that job. It was a great job. It was a really good first retail job. I highly recommend, if there's any teenagers for whatever reason watching this out there, and you're looking for like a kind of low key but good for learning about arts and crafts kind of part-time job in high school, try Jo-Ann Fabrics if they're still hiring 16-year-olds. It was really like nice, low key. You mostly have to deal with just people who are looking for parts for their various crafts. It's really good. But I digress. The reason I brought that up Oh, right. I didn't have time junior year to do as much as I wanted to, or like as I thought I was supposed to, I guess. I don't even know what I wanted to do at that point because I'd just been people pleasing for so long. I was just like, oh, what am I supposed to do next? Tell me, person. What am I supposed to do next? I'm a puppet. Like, and then Oh, so that's what it was. Junior year, I started working at Joann Fabrics 20 to 24, 25 hours a week or so. And then I was also doing a college class, and I was doing Foundations of Logical Reasoning 101 for like a semester. And I did that for a semester, and then I was like, well, I wanted to do more of these college classes, but I have to work more, like, and I'm still doing high school, and it was just so much. So I think, yeah, the first semester of junior year, I was like, okay, I'll do the Joanne, I'll work and I'll do this college class and I'll do my high school stuff. And then the next half of the year, I'll do the musical and I'll work and do my high school stuff because I can't do both. Like, talk about just burning the candle on every end. Like, if there's more than two ends, you burnt all of them. And I was told that quite a bit, but it was also like, but I feel like I'm supposed to do all this stuff. How will I have an impressive resume for college if I don't do absolutely everything and burn myself out all the time? I don't know. And then senior year was like the real, oh, everything is just so serious now. We're all going to go to college and figure out which one we're going to, and you have to do all of these applications and blah blah blah. And like, I probably could have applied for a bunch of scholarships. I just really did not have the mental bandwidth. Oh, because I almost forgot. When I was 15, my dad got arrested and taken out of my house. So like that put things into a little bit of turmoil for a minute there. It turns out that has like its own weird, stressful psychological effect. And I make jokes about this stuff because I truly cannot handle it otherwise. Because it's just like, like, what? Like, what? How am I even supposed to deal with this if I don't laugh at it? So, like, yeah, so yeah, everything became a little more tumultuous at the age of 15, sophomore year, when my dad got removed by police from my house for molesting the hell out of me. And after that, things were a little confusing. Aside from trying to do all of the extra stuff like I just listed off before. And in addition to that, then like, so I was doing all of that extra stuff. I was doing my schoolwork. I did the college course. I did the musicals. And then during that time frame, I was also being pulled out of school to go to court on like a fairly regular basis because it was an ongoing case, like Commonwealth versus so and so, for however many years. I think it was between sophomore year and like freshman year of college, everything finally got resolved. So I was just dealing with that in addition to trying to do everything, in addition to trying to act like a normal person while I'm just like having flashbacks in class and people are like, you're weird, you're a nerd, you're a geek, and also why are you so like, what's your problem? And I'm just like, I'm just trying to act normal. I don't know what the hell you want from me. So that was that. And then senior year, everyone was like, you know, applying to 100,000 different colleges. They're talking about their safety schools or whatever. Yeah, they're talking about their safety schools. I applied for one school. I applied to one school. My guidance counselor thought I was out of my mind. My English teacher almost didn't even write me a recommendation letter because he didn't even want me to go to this school because he was just like, but I want you to do English. You're so good at it. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate the compliment, but this is the school I want to go to. Great guy. He did end up writing me the recommendation letter. So I only applied to one school. I applied to Mass Maritime. Let's just get it out there. If anyone's already Googled my name, that's already come up, so it's irrelevant. And whatever, that's the school I went to. I went to Mass Maritime. Not that anyone like would believe it looking at me now, but I did. And yeah, that was the only school I applied to. I got in early admission, and I was just like, I'm done. Like, I did what you told me to do the college thing. I got in. I'm done. Like, this is what I'm doing. I don't have the mental bandwidth to like deal with anything else. Oh my gosh, I even forgot. So in between, I did so many so many things. So I felt so obligated to do so many things in between junior year and senior year in order to get money for a car. So in between junior year and senior year, and then the summer after senior year, I actually went and like moved with one of my mom's friends. I moved in with her for both of those summers, and I worked full time at a gift shop so that I could get money for a car. And I realized like that's not typical either. And it was one of those like my mom just couldn't even deal with me and just wanted me out of the house kind of things, and like she could deal with me, or like she was like, oh, it's fine, she's just gonna work and get drunk on the beach every night. But like so I went down and did that, and I really like, I think that's one of the things. I was talking to a friend and they're like, you're just so used to just up and leaving and just like doing whatever you like, going anywhere. And I was like, yeah, it's because I got used to it really young, because I started doing that and I'd just go down for the summer and work, and I was like kind of on my own. I mean, their parents were around. It was like one of my friends and two of his parents, and they were around, but we were pretty independent for that age. And yeah, I was just walking to work, working the whole like 40 hours a week, and then walking home, and then using my little bit of like extra spending money that I wasn't saving to just like buy ice cream. And so that was fun. Oh my gosh, we had just crazy times there. It really was. It seemed more adult than would be like normal, I guess, for that age. So I did that both of those summers, and then I took my little booty to Mass Maritime. It was like the best choice and the worst choice for like someone with my issues, because I was already super traumatized, and I'd had a PTSD diagnosis since I was 15. So it was very much like very obvious, this girl's traumatized. She has PTSD. Like, she has flashbacks. She dissociates. Like, sometimes she's just not there. Give her a minute, she'll come back from the 1,000-yard stare kind of thing. And like, they didn't. Like, they were used to dealing with that from like people who were veterans, I guess. Like, obviously everyone's used to dealing with that kind of stuff from people who were veterans. Back then in like 2009, it was not as common for anyone to really understand like PTSD in the context of sexual abuse. Like, it was way harder to understand, and like now there's way more information about it and people are more well versed in it. But back then people were very confused. I was very weird, again, as usual. I was the weird one who like would tape a note to my back during our study hours freshman year, because people were allowed to come in and out of our room while we studied for like 2 hours until 10 p.m. at night or whatever. And if they startled me when I was hyper focused on whatever homework I was doing, I would flip out because of the PTSD, because that's classic. Don't come up behind me. Everybody knows that. Anyone knows that about PTSD. Just don't sneak up behind me and we won't have a problem, usually. And then so I was doing all of that. That schedule was absolutely insane. The schedule they had us following freshman and sophomore year was absolutely crazy. My whole schedule was absolutely filled from like 5:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night every single day, between being in charge of cleaning all the dorms. I forget. We'd be on a rotating schedule where we'd either have to clean the dorms in the morning or clean the dorms at night, but every week you were either on one shift or the other, and then it would rotate kind of thing. So sometimes I was just getting up like before everyone else at 5 in the morning with a bunch of my classmates to like clean the bathrooms, clean the floors, clean the railings, take the trash out, all that. And then as soon as we were done with that, it was like, okay, now go and do your like morning formation and march around thing and wake up all the neighbors with the marching band. And then it was like, okay, now go to class, and you're going to have these really intense classes with all these really intense people for however many hours. And then after that, like, I think we might have in freshman year had like a couple of hours in the afternoons to just like do what we wanted and like decompress and like go for a walk. Usually people were either going for a walk or a run, or like sleeping or like listening to music. And yeah, and then it was study hours at night where like people would just be walking in and out making sure you're studying. You like weren't allowed to have headphones. It was considered contraband. There were all sorts of stuff that were considered contraband like the first year or two, and then you slowly got more privileges as the time went on, just like very similar to how you'd be treated in like the military. They call it a paramilitary school because it's set up like the military, and I understand that probably makes people think I was brainwashed, and I was. It's absolutely brainwashing, like, make no mistake about it. I can confirm, like, it took a lot of time to break myself of some of those habits and break myself of some of the way that they talk, especially because it's like, you know, obviously swearing like a sailor is uh, a phrase everyone uses, but oh my goodness, I learned so many new combinations that I had to like specifically forget them. Because my professors, a lot, like, this is no criticism of them. It was one of the things that I actually needed at the time to like kind of toughen me up. And a lot of people I think did need it to toughen them up. And then but like but basically a lot of my professors would just like yell at us and like swear at us and call us whale shit, and like you're lower than whale shit. This is whale shit. This is you. You're lower than whale shit. And like stuff like that. Like, and you know, most of them were either ex merchant marines or ex military, and like not for nothing, but they knew what they were talking about. Like they were harsh and they were awful, and it was for a reason, and like they were accurate. So I can't even really criticize them. But it's like, yeah, they were super harsh, and that's why I'm harsh, because I listened to people be unbelievably harsh for like 4 years straight, and I am trying to break myself of that because I realize it's not the greatest approach most of the time. It doesn't necessarily affect the change that you want it to. But yeah, like going into normal jobs after being able to talk to each other like that was really confusing. And I think a lot of people who have that training and then just try to integrate into like totally normal jobs, it's just like, I'm sorry, what do you mean I can't call someone out for being stupid to their face directly? Like, I have to go to management and then they're going to have some soft little meeting where they don't even really address the problem. Like, what do you mean? Or, you know, when it's someone who's your peer, like we were allowed to correct our peers because that was the whole point. It was like, where's your buddy? If you don't have your buddy, you're dead kind of stuff, you know? So we were always like allowed to correct each other as long as we were peers and it wasn't someone above us in the hierarchy. And then like it was even so much that because the seniors and the juniors were in charge of the sophomores and the freshmen, like we had specific sides of the cafeteria that we were allowed to sit on, and the sophomores and the freshmen couldn't interact and sit with the seniors and the juniors because it would be fraternization, because they weren't supposed to have like buddy time because they were in charge of them kind of thing. So that was a whole thing. And yeah, it was really intense. I did a really, like, even I was doing one of the less I don't know, respected, I guess. It was really one of the less respected majors there at the time. It was environmental protection and safety, or they called it marine safety and environmental protection then. But either way, it's a mouthful. And it was a Bachelor of Science program. And yeah, it was just intense. There was a ton of like intense labs. It was a ton of math and chemistry in order to get that degree. And it was super beneficial to me going forward into different jobs. And like, I mean, it's just, it blows my mind sometimes how much I actually had to do. And part of it was because I spent the first like 2 years or year and a half going for marine transportation. That was my major at first until I switched. So when I switched, I had to play catch up and do like 18 to like 21, 23 credits a semester. So I was just unbelievably overloaded from trying to catch up from like, oh, well, you did all of these and you were like, at it. And now it's like both bringing down your GPA and also like making it so you have to do extra classes while you're trying to catch up. So, you know, just another, like, I only say that because it's like another example of like just doing so much all the time and it just being so stressful all the time. Like, like freshman year, I had to freshman year I had to continue like going to court for like one or two times, and it was super awkward because I had to request the time off from the people in charge of me at school, and they're just like, what are you doing? Are you in trouble? You have to go to court? Is it because you're in trouble? And I'm just like, oh my goodness, please, for the love of God, drop this right now. And yeah, no, it was because I was in the middle of getting a permanent restraining order against the man who molested me most of my childhood. But other than that, I was good. And I say it that way because, like I said, I don't know how else to deal with it than just being like, yeah, that's what happened. And other than that, I was good. It's like, it doesn't matter at this point. Like, and I hope that anyone who's had that kind of awful, awful stuff can get to the point where they're like, yeah, well, other than that, I was good. Like, and then I was working, like I had to work all the time because my family's poor and I needed money. Like you do, just for supplementing everything basically. And so I was working in the summers at a photo studio. That was really fun. That's part of why like I put up the whole photography thing, and I've been interested in that because freshman and sophomore, like the summer after both of those college years, I was working at a photo studio that was old time photography. So people would come in and you dress them up as like pilgrims or oh my gosh, like old Western or flappers, or like there were a few different options, and it was really, really silly. Like there was Victorian. Occasionally we'd get a request from a randy couple to do some boudoir photos. We had capabilities to do that. So we did all of that. I learned how to pose people. I learned how to set up the lighting. I learned how to like get the angles right so all the people looked their best, and like got the costumes on them and made sure everything was right. And then I learned a little more about Photoshop so I could fix everything perfectly for them and da 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 da. I think, oh yeah, and I was making commission on those. Any sale I made over like $100, I think I got 5% commission because the lady who owned the place was awesome. I absolutely love her. She is an angel. She saved my butt those 2 summers, just giving me a job, giving me somewhere to go, something to do that was like really, really creative and productive, and I could also get paid. Love her, thank her to no end. She was absolutely wonderful. No wonder I was so tired all the time. They required us to do 2 internships in order to graduate. So the winter of junior year, I went to Africa. That's when I went to South Africa for a month, and I did the shark research internship. And that was really, really good. That was really, really interesting. I learned so much. I am so glad I did that. It was one of those things that I've been dreaming of doing since like high school. And I remember I even found like written down not too long ago from me when I was like 16, talking about how I wanted to make sure I got to Africa during college, and I did. And that's one of the things I was really, really happy about. I'm probably still paying for it now as far as like paying loans back, but I don't care. It was worth it. And you can go look at my the most important conversation I had in South Africa video after this if you're interested in some stories from there. But I was working on research projects about great white sharks. We were working on some cetacean studies. We were working on a couple of studies like inside of this little aquarium they had. So that was that internship. I mean, the experience was itself, I could talk about it for hours. I could recap the entire thing from start to finish. It would take a whole month, but in the spring of junior year, I started working at this gift shop on the weekends in addition to doing all of my schoolwork because that's what it was. Because my stepfather passed away. So like the winter of sophomore year, I started working at the strip club because my stepfather had been laid off, and they were struggling to pay their mortgage. So I gave them a bunch of money from that, and that held them over for a little while, but then he still didn't get a job, and then he ended up passing away. He died in November of 2012. That was my junior year. And so I was just dealing with like my mother losing her second husband. That was completely unexpected. And Then we were cleaning out my childhood home in order to sell it, which was not expected. And then, yeah, that was also when they decided I was bipolar, like all around all at that same time, which was just really just shoddy work on their part. I mean, as much as I can, sit back and be like, well, I was super stressed out, so what are you gonna do? I'm sure they did their best, but realistically, it's like whoever looked at my life at that point and didn't just see that I was severely traumatized and stressed out, I don't understand why they would call it bipolar. But I guess PTSD and bipolar can kind of overlap as far as some of the symptoms, but so they started me on a bunch of drugs and like a crap load of lithium, and then my grades started slipping because I couldn't stay awake because they had me so tranquilized on psych drugs. And that was really, then it was mostly just a battle between my brain and the drugs to be able to even get any schoolwork done. Like it was really just the drugs holding me back at that point. Looking back at it now, it was like I was like, how come I was struggling so much? I know I was stressed out, but really, like, oh no, it's because I also had like 1,800 milligrams or like 1,200 milligrams of lithium running through my veins, and I was trying to like run cross country, do exceptionally difficult work in school for a bachelor science program, like work also on the weekends, and then recover from the trauma of like my stepfather committing suicide. So there was that. So I looked a little crazy to other people, or I seemed a little out of it. I seemed a little out of it. I seemed a little stressed out. I seemed a little out there, understandably so. And it's like, hindsight really is 2020. I can't imagine what some of the people were thinking while like seeing me like that, but hindsight really is 2020. It's like, and could anyone else look more hinged? Could anyone else look more hinged while that kind of stuff was happening? I don't fucking think so. It's gonna make anybody look just like maximum stress level achieved. And that was when I like lost a ton of weight. I can't believe I was also still doing cross country. Junior and senior year I was doing cross country in the fall, and like and then working also. Oh my god. Yeah, I was running, 5Ks on the weekends, almost every weekend, because it was like once the practices were, the first like couple weeks of practices were done, we had a race every weekend, every Saturday. So I was racing every Saturday and then working every Sunday, and then I might have even been working some of the Saturday nights afterwards. Like it was just so much all the time. Trying to keep my sanity together while like pretending everything's normal, like, oh my goodness. So there was that, fighting through the drug haze of lithium, and then like once they started piling other drugs on top of it, just like, how come you can't keep up with your schoolwork all of a sudden? How come you can't keep up with your schoolwork? We only just tranquilized you with a horse's dose of lithium. What's your problem? Like, oh, sorry. I was struggling a little. And I can laugh at it now, but at the time, I mean, it really is messed up when you think about it. I can laugh at it, but I understand, like, I have a very dark sense of humor. And also, it's my story, so I'm allowed to laugh at it. But yeah, it was just, it was a lot. Yeah, so then senior year I also had to do an internship. So that's when I applied to Woods Hole, and I was at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute for a guest student position that the winter of my senior year, and I was doing a study about barnacles. I was doing a study about barnacles and like their population. It was a population study to see if their population has increased or decreased in the amount of time that they had been monitoring this specific spot. And it turned out they had increased, and it turned out the water temperature had also increased, and we decided that that was probably why. And that was like essentially the wrap up that I did by the end of the summer my senior year. Was that what it was? It's so hard to remember. Oh, no, I did the guest student thing the summer after junior year. And that's when I was also working at a bowling alley at the same time. That's what it was. And that's why I was so tired that summer. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I did the guest student thing that summer between junior and senior year. And that's when I was working at a bowling alley instead of the gift shop because it was in the town that I was at for the internship. So I would go from the internship, it was like 8 hours a day at the internship, and then I would work 4 hours at the bowling alley, and then I would go home and sleep and do it all again, like every day. Ugh, 5 days a week. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Oh, that was so much. I was so tired. Anyway, and then senior year. Yeah, that's right. So then senior year in the fall and in the winter when I was doing the guest student thing again, finishing up the barnacle study. That's what it was. It's finishing up the barnacle study in the winter. I was working at the gift shop. I was babysitting, and I was doing something else too. I forget even what it was, but oh, it was the internship. Those were the three things. I was going like in a crazy loop from the internship to babysitting to my retail job, just like. And at that point I was like a manager or whatever. He had made me a manager, so he was like, here you go, you can do our cash deposits. And so that was an extra stressful addition to my responsibilities. Not that that's that stressful, but I really hate handling like large amounts of cash. Luckily I made it through. No one bothered me, but yeah. So we figured out the barnacles. I used to see barnacles in my sleep. I would look at, like, I was going through like 12 years of data and 12 years of pictures of these barnacles and like counting them and it was to the point I would just see barnacles when I closed my eyes sometimes. And then we had the end of senior year. I didn't I walked at our graduation, but I didn't technically have my diploma yet because I had like one more class. I had to do environmental economics or something. I had one class left to just like get it. But I walked at our graduation in 2013, and yeah, yeah, we did it. Oh, and then I did another internship after because I figured I might as well since I didn't technically have the diploma yet. So that's when I worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I went down and I worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife at Monomoy. Oh, that was such a fun job. So it was like, I think the stipend, I was getting like $150 a week stipend or like an $80 a week stipend or something. It was really, really, really small. So I had to work at a different place in order to do the internship. And so I was doing the internship and then working at it was in the same town that I had worked at a gift shop in high school. So luckily I just went up to the gift shop I worked at in high school and was like, hey, I'm here for the summer again. Can I work again? And they were like, sure. And so any day that I wasn't doing my internship, I was working for them. So I was literally booked 7 days a week that whole summer pretty much. It was insane. I was exhausted, but it was really, really good. I learned a ton at that internship. That was a great, great internship. It was really good for like networking. It was really good to just like meet a bunch of different wildlife biologists and like see what that was all about. Because I thought I was going to want to go more into research. And after working at the lab, I really hated it. I'm not going to lie. I actually hated the lab. I hated the culture of the lab. I loved the people I worked for, but the general culture of like the entire place, like it was really catty. It was really like high school. I was always super ostracized at the lab even as a guest student because I didn't have a master's, and I was like, well, I'm 20, like, or like 21. I don't know what you expect me to do about that other than go on and get one later. So it was just a really weird culture, really cutthroat, really like everyone trying to prove that they're the smartest person in the room. Like, and I don't play that game. I hate that game. It's a stupid game, and I'm like, you don't want to play that game. You really don't. It's a bad game. It's a crap game. The who's the smartest in the room game. And that's why I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to say all of this about my academic stuff to like brag about my career. It's more to explain why I'm so tired all the time. And I was so tired all the time. And it's more of a testimony, really. It's more of a testimony to the fact that it's like, even though awful stuff can happen to you all the time, you can still do good stuff even while everything's stressful. And the only reason I made it through all of that is because God let me. Let's make one thing abundantly clear. The only reason I made it through any of the stuff I just went off about is because God let me. And like the only reason he let me is so I could come here and tell my story and use it as a testimony of his strength and how much you can get done through his strength, because there is literally no other way I would have been able to do any of this stuff. Absolutely not. If God's hand wasn't on my life, I wouldn't have been able to do any of this at all. And it's not even like I have that much to show for it. I mean, once I left college, I did, I graduated. I got the last class out of the way at the end of 2013. And it was like I was living a double life at the end of 2013. I mean, I was working at a strip club and trying to finish my one last class at school, and then pretend. Oh, and working at the oh my God, I was still doing the internship. I was also working at a strip club so I could make actual money. And then I was also taking my last class. And that's what I was dealing with, just like the chronic stress of doing all of that, or attempting to, at the end of 2013. And yeah, so it's no wonder really that by the end of 2013, like January 2014, I actually slipped into a suicidal depression, and I almost offed myself. It was really close. I took a whole bottle of lithium and a whole bottle of Seroquel, and I almost offed myself, but I didn't. I'm still alive, and I swear to God, God is the only reason I made it through that either, because that should have taken me out. That absolutely should have taken me out. And the only reason I'm here to talk about it is because it's like, hey guys, don't do that. If you're ever feeling suicidal, just literally go do anything else that could possibly be like better for you, or, not as harmful. And please just go do that, because God wants you to stay alive. God wants you to stay alive till your natural time. And if you don't believe in God, the universe wants you to stay alive until your natural time. And if you don't believe in the universe, science wants you to stay alive until your natural time. How about that? Yeah, then I don't know, it took me about like a month and a half, maybe 2 months to bounce back from that. And then I started working with kids. And that's why, friends, like, what are we even doing even? Like, I was fine. I was completely... Here's the thing. People always want to act like a stay at the psych ward, or having some sort of psychiatric problem, or, having to go to a psychologist or therapist or any of those kind of things are some sort of mar. There's some sort of mark on your, your mental health, or your mental state, or your cognition, or your integrity, or whatever. And realistically, it's like, if you're honest about your shortcomings, and if you're honest about when you need help, that is way more admirable than someone who's just white knuckle pretending that they feel okay when really everything's like going insane in there. That's how you get real problems. So it really disturbs me when people try to use that as some sort of denigration of your character now. But everyone always claims they care about mental health, but when it comes down to it, they start saying things like that, and it gives me a heavy side eye. Kind of like, what do you mean? Yeah, sometimes people need to go to the psych ward to get their stuff figured out for a week. It's really not that deep. Like, it's like a vacation at that point if you're messed up enough. And anyone who's been there knows it. And so I don't judge anyone for that kind of stuff, and especially because it's like you can have a crisis and then bounce back fairly quickly. Like, it's all dependent on how resilient the people are, and it's like all dependent on what their life is like at that time. But you can have a crisis and bounce back very quickly. So I don't really judge anybody by any of that kind of stuff, least of all myself, because I'm here to give myself some grace, and I'm here to encourage everyone else to give yourselves some grace as well. And so then I started. So that's like the end of my academic career. That's when I started working with kids, and I think that's where I'm gonna leave it here, because I just wanted to do a little brain damage ramble about my academic career and what school was like, and how I was a weirdo, and why I am the way I am, and how the only reason I'm allowed to even be alive to tell this story is because God said so. Like, because God let me. Like, the only reason I'm alive to tell this story is because God wants to use it to inspire people to just do as much as they can without burning themselves out. Like, there's a healthy limit of, like, yes, I am doing as much as I can without, like, it being a detriment to myself, without it actually, like, being counterproductive and harming me. And before I just ramble for way too long, I think I'm going to cut it off here. Thank you for anyone who was listening. If you made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate you. I hope you're well. And God bless you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.